Welcome to WiseTake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we are bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It is Thursday, February 9th, 2017, and we've got a nice 5-game slate to get those of you who are with me on the Northeast who are currently getting smashed by the snowstorm, expected 8 to 12 inches. We do have a nice 5-game slate to get us through the day. Hopefully, my wife, her job was closed today due to the weather. I'm hoping that if you're in the Northeast, the same thing happened to you and your family and your home, and if you're a DFS player, you can enjoy today's 5-game slate and just spend your day researching and watching WiseTake videos and looking at WiseTake projections and all that good stuff, right? Anyway, last night, before we talk about today, last night was a phenomenal slate, and I'm not just saying that because I cashed in all my cash games on FanDuel and DraftKings. Not just saying, but because I thought it was a lot of fun. You didn't have Harden or Westbrook to have to worry about paying up for or fitting in, but you did have 12 games to choose from. So there were a lot of options, and there were a lot of other studs who were more affordable that you had to choose from. One of the guys that I was big on was IT2. He didn't do what I wanted him to do, but he did do what I needed him to do, if that makes sense. So he got, I think, 38 DraftKings points. So obviously I'm hoping more for his projection, which was like 46 to 50. And he didn't do that. But in cash games, when you're paying up, and I mentioned this on the podcast, I mentioned that I was going to, because of all the value that was out there with the Kings and some of the other teams, I said that I was going to save with the value, and it was going to allow me to purchase Isaiah Thomas's points. And essentially what I meant by that is I'm buying his floor. In GPPs, obviously, it's a different mentality, but in cash games, when you're looking for safety, right, when you're buying a stud, when you're paying up for a stud, you're really paying up for his floor because you are looking for safety. So you want to know worst case scenario, what is he going to do? I felt like Isaiah Thomas's floor last night was about 35. So I was paying for 35. He got 38. I was hoping he would give me the 45 to 50. He didn't, but he didn't kill me. He didn't kill me because I hit on my other value plays. I was really, really big on Kyle O'Quinn. I had mentioned on the podcast and I mentioned on the live show that I really liked Kyle O'Quinn, and I mentioned that I was thinking about putting him in cash. Well, I did. I did put him in cash. I was nervous about it in the beginning, but right from the first quarter when I saw what kind of run he got off in the start, I knew I made the right choice. And it was nice, too. He was 4,100 on DraftKings. He was 39 on FanDuel. I played him on both sides in my cash games, and he did phenomenal. 38 DraftKings points, 30-something FanDuel points. You can't really ask for more on a guy that's, that cheap. And his ownership was pretty low, too, because he burned so many people the night before. Now, my cash games, I'm not too concerned about ownership, but I also had, I want to say I had like 75% exposure to him on GPPs as well. I really liked Kyle O'Quinn. And if you listen to the podcast and the live show, you would have got that I really liked him. And not that I'm some kind of Knicks wizard. I am a Knicks fan. But it's very obvious to me at this point that I'm starting to get a gauge of, when Noah is out, that is, I'm starting to get a gauge of which matchup the coach wants each one in. And it's not too hard to figure out. We saw, like, for instance, against Atlanta the other day, we saw Hernangomez didn't really play much. He got some run in overtime, but the only reason he even touched the court in that game was because O'Quinn and Noah both fouled out. Why? Hernangomez is probably, offensively, he's one of their better centers, so why? It's because Hernangomez is young and he's not that strong. And Hornacek doesn't want to put him against a guy like Dwight Howard, who is very physical and very strong and can bully. DeAndre Jordan last night. Andre Drummond. Those are the kind of centers that Hernangomez is not really suited for, at least in Hornacek's mind. How do I think he'll do? I kind of see where Hornacek's coming from, because we saw last night when Hernangomez was in there, he did play. So when he was in there last night against DeAndre Jordan, we did see DeAndre Jordan kind of really physical. Get a little physical and rough with him and push him around a little bit. And listen, he's a tough kid. He's not like backing down. I just don't think he's physically strong enough or capable yet. He's just very young. I don't think he's physically capable yet of standing his ground. So they went with Kyle O'Quinn because Kyle O'Quinn he's a little thicker of a guy. He's stronger of a guy. He's much firmer of a base. He's not as easy to push around. And he's used to playing with these big physical dudes. So it makes sense. It made sense. We saw against the Lakers, Hernangomez got the run because the Lakers don't have a big dominant center. So when that happens, they can put Hernangomez in there and let Hernangomez kind of go nuts. But when we have a big dominant center, like I said, the Drummonds, the Howards, and the DeAndre Jordans, they're going to go with Noah and O'Quinn because they're more physical kind of players. So I think that's the kind of a trend that we can look at regarding these teams, because I think it's important to figure that out, because week to week, Kyle O'Quinn and Joakim Noah are decent value plays. Now, Hernan Gomez obviously he was the best value play, but that's not going to be the case anymore because his price is obviously jacked up. So unless he just goes on a run of just, crap shoes and crap fests, we're not going to be able to just lock him in these situations and just, kick back and watch, because we don't know if he's going to get the run. So I don't feel comfortable paying over 5K for somebody that I don't know is going to get run that night, right? So anyway, that was a quick rant. So I was nervous about it. I did put him in cash. I was extremely lucky. Now, on FanDuel, my lineup is actually really good. I think it was like 341, and I should have put it in more GPPs. It actually did great. Now, I will say that on FanDuel, the pricing is a little easier, right? It's easier to get all as you want. FanDuel might be a little easier for you to maneuver that, because you have to have 2 point guards, 2 shooting guards, 2 power forwards, 2 small forwards, and a center, obviously. So I'm not saying that FanDuel is any easier, and the reason it's not is because that same advantage that you're getting with the prices, so are these other players. So all these other sharp guys that you're playing against in these large tournaments, they have the same advantage. So it's an even playing field. So I'm just saying that in some situations, if there's a lot of guys you like, FanDuel might be easier because you could fit those guys in. Just for example, on my FanDuel lineup and my DraftKings lineup, they were pretty similar. Obviously they aren't that similar just because you can't. The formats are different, but they're pretty similar. I had Wilson Chandler in both. I had Blake Griffin in both. I had Kyle O'Quinn in both. So they were similar to a degree. Where they differentiated is on FanDuel, I didn't have to play another cheapie like Michael Carter-Williams. I didn't have to. And Michael Carter-Williams played horribly. On DraftKings, I went with Michael Carter-Williams because I figured he would be super chalky in cash games, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody that was cheap, that was really chalky. I only had 4,700 to fill that util spot, so I picked Michael Carter-Williams because I figured Wade would be out. I knew Butler was out. His usage would be there. And I figured that the rest of the field would take him because his previous 2 games were pretty good. So I figured that people would be on him and he would keep me in the middle of the pack. If I'm going to take a chalky guy in cash, I want to make sure that I'm not going to get burned. So for me not to get burned, that just means that everybody has to be on him. And he was about 50% owned in the single entry $25 double up on DraftKings. So I was fine with that. He only got 9 DraftKings points, and you know what? I still cast on DraftKings. So he didn't really hurt me. So that's fine. I was okay with that. So again, I'm not saying that FanDuel is any easier to play, because it's not. It's not picking the lineups that makes it hard. It's the other players and how much better they are at you that night at setting their lineups. That's what makes it hard. So I'm just saying that on different slates, you have different. You might have a different read on each slate. Like maybe you'll find it easier on this slate to play FanDuel. Maybe you'll find it easier on this slate to be DraftKings, because there's certainly situations where maybe like on FanDuel, you have to fill 2 small forwards, and there's not a second one that I want to play. I say small forwards because that's typically a pretty ugly position. And there's situations where it's like there's one small forward that I really like, and there's nobody else that I like in that position. So on FanDuel, you're forced to roster that second one. On DraftKings, you cannot. You can just put one small forward in and just load up on power forwards or whatever the case is. Plus, on DraftKings, there's more flexibility. So they have their advantages to both. But anyway, we're going to dive into... Oh, real quick, before we go any further, how about Drummond, man? Wow. I did mention that he was in play. I had some GPP exposure to Drummond. It's just a shame that the game was such a blowout, and I was concerned about that. I did mention on the podcast yesterday that I said, don't let the Lakers fool you. Don't let the Knicks fool you. Yes, the Knicks did get blown out by the Lakers in New York, but I said I think it was more of a product of the Knicks just playing horribly than it was the Lakers played well. And I said I thought Detroit would blow them out, and Detroit really did blow them out. I think Drummond, he had just under 60 DraftKings points, and he didn't even play in the fourth quarter, I don't think. So I think he had like 28 minutes, and he still got like almost 60 DraftKings points. So it was a phenomenal game from him. Imagine if the game was close. He probably would have put up 75 to 80. So that was interesting. But also, I mentioned on the live show, I was asked what my favorite games to target were. I said Atlanta and Denver, and I said the Clippers and New York. And I thought that they were both perfectly fine. They both did well. Jokic had a pretty good game. I had some GPP exposure to him. And even though he only got in the 40s, he didn't get the 50 that I think people are looking for. He was also cheaper on the night. So considering his price, he was completely fine. Wilson Chandler did great. I had a lot of exposure to Wilson Chandler. He was in all my cash games, and he was in probably half of my GPP lineups. And I was happy with what he did. He didn't go all out. Like the way he started off the game, I really thought he was gonna just smash, and it wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, he did fine. The first quarter though, he just crushed in the first quarter, and then he kind of leveled out after that. Finished with just under 40. I think he had like 37 DraftKings points. I had some Melo on FanDuel. I had Melo on DraftKings. I did not because I chose to play Wilson Chandler instead. Melo did well for me on FanDuel. I was happy about that. But yeah, those are the two games I targeted. Blake was my guy. I think I had 100% Blake Griffin last night. He was the only guy that I had more than like 75%. I had 100% exposure to Blake Griffin. I said on the pod, I really liked Blake. I said on the live show, I really liked Blake. So those are the two games that I recommended, targeted, that I was big on. I was asked a question on the live show about which games I was going to target, or which games are my favorite games to target, I think the question was, and those were my favorite two games. And real quick, before we talk about today's slate, I got a tweet about, wrote a tweet about JaMychal Green getting ready to screw me up. When I do that during the games, just ignore me. I am a little superstitious, so that's my way of jinxing. You know what I mean? Like I was just saying, JaMychal Green's, he's going to cost me tonight. And sure enough, after I said that, he picked up his game. He ended up getting just under 30 DraftKings points. So that's just something that I do just to kind of jinx it up a little bit, just for my own, just to vent a little bit. And at the same time, if he doesn't change his performance around, then what I said was justified. And if he does, then I guess I jinxed it. So it's a win-win situation. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something that I do. Anyway, we're going to talk about today. We got some injuries. We got Richaun Holmes is questionable with the respiratory issue. Joel Embiid is obviously out. If Richaun Holmes cannot play, I don't think it has too much of an effect, but it does make me like Okafor and Noel a little more. And Ilyasova, you got to look into the three of those guys. Okafor is the cheapest, so he's probably the guy in cash games that you would want to go to. I think he's like 4,400 on DraftKings, and he's been playing fairly consistent lately. So I think that, especially in a matchup against Orlando, who's probably I don't know if they're the worst, but they're one of the worst teams DVP-wise against centers. So I think Okafor is certainly in play. I wish Noel was cheaper, but Noel is more of a GPP play to me just because his minutes are so insecure. We don't see him play lately. We haven't really seen him play more than like 22 minutes. And even when Okafor and Embiid were both out, we didn't see him play more than 28. So they just don't like to give this guy too much run. Or maybe they're afraid to get him hurt before they trade him. I don't know what the case is, but I think in GPPs you could take a shot on him. Ilyasova's got a tougher matchup against Ibaka, but his usage rate is still pretty high without Embiid, so he's certainly in play. But I think out of those three guys, Okafor is probably the guy I would trust the most in cash, just because he's the cheapest, so I think he's got the best chance of hitting his salary. Moving on to the Orlando side, Jeff Green is questionable for personal issue. He missed his last game. I think it was the birth of his child. And then Aaron Gordon's questionable with a foot injury. So let's talk about that, because I think that's got bigger implications here. If Aaron Gordon is out, I think Vooch, on paper, Vooch gets the highest usage bump, and then followed by Ibaka. Ibaka's is minimal. I think it's like 1%, but Ibaka does too. Fournier a little bit. The on paper, Elf's goes down a little bit, but I honestly, I think it's a super small sample size when I did it. I don't know for sure, but I think that I think Vooch is certainly in play. I think Ibaka's in play. Fournier is obviously in play. They're going to need offense from somebody, and Aaron Gordon isn't necessarily a key, cornerstone, but I do think without Gordon, they do become a little bit more vulnerable to the wings. So I think guys like Covington, for instance, I don't think that they're going to really have an answer. Because, I mean, if Jeff Green plays, I think Jeff Green is a great value play. We start off by saying that. If he does play at 4K, he's a great value play. He should see at least 30 minutes, I would imagine. So I don't think paying off his 4K salary on DraftKings would be too difficult. Jeff Green, in a match, if he does play, he'll be matched up with Covington. So that'll make things tough for Green, because Covington's actually he's been playing pretty good defense lately this year. And I actually do like Covington if Aaron Gordon plays or not. I still like Covington, but I think I like him a little bit more maybe if Gordon's out. But anyway, I think Vooch crushed last time. He's in a pretty good spot. I don't think he's going to put up 50 again, but I do think he's okay. I think Ibaka's okay against Illy. I'm not concerned about Illy. Fournier's okay. The Elf actually gets a little, on paper, he gets like a small decrease in usage, but I'm not going to be playing Elf too much today, maybe in GPPs, but it's not because of that. It's more so just because what was I going to say? Um, oh, he's got a matchup against McConnell, and I'm not too. I don't really like targeting guys against McConnell because he's young and he's actually a decent defender. He's not bad. Anyway, moving on. Cody Zeller's probable with a quad. If Cody Zeller plays, I'm not going to have too much exposure to Kaminsky, and I'm certainly not putting him in cash. Not at his price. If he was still cheap like he was, then yeah, I would put him in cash even as a backup, just because he's the backup power forward and the backup center right now. So I do think he's going to get more minutes than we've seen in the past when they had Hawes and all those other guys down there. So I definitely do think that Kaminsky is worth keeping an eye on now. He's like 5,600 on DraftKings now. That's just too much for me to pay for him at this point when he's not even starting. Now, if for any reason Cody Zeller gets ruled out, which again I did say he's probable, but if for any reason he does get ruled out, I certainly will be locking Kaminsky into all my cash game lineups and probably most of my GPPs, just because he's the center. So we saw him get a lot of run last time, and he did extremely well based on his cheap salary last time. But if Zeller plays, I'm not too big on him. I'm certainly not playing him in cash if Zeller plays. I will play him a little bit in GPPs, but that's it. If Zeller is out, I'll be loading up on him. Staying within this team, Ramon Sessions is expected to be out. I don't think that has too much implication on Kemba because he typically plays 30 to 35 minutes anyway. 35 to 37 minutes anyway. So I think Kemba's pretty good. I think he's in a pretty good spot here. His last 3 games have been pretty bad for Kemba, and especially against Brooklyn. He really burned a lot of people against Brooklyn. But this is a situation that's a little bit different. Number one, he was home against Brooklyn, but they were on a 3-game road trip. And I always say that when these teams go on these road trips, their first game back home is typically tough. They're typically sluggish. It's typically a letdown spot. And that's what happened, and Brooklyn tried to capitalize. Now, Charlotte did pull out the win, and I think people will be a little off of Kemba because he just burned them so bad. But he's home, and also he's got a tougher matchup against Beverly, which I think people will give Beverly a little more credit than he probably. Beverly's a good defender, but Kemba's also very good. And I think Kemba's very sneaky today. You could put him in cash. It might be hard to do that because you're probably going to want to pay up for either Harden or Westbrook, so that might make it tough. But I think Kemba's in a sneaky spot today. He'll definitely make my player pool tonight. I definitely want some exposure to him. And okay, so we're gonna move on from that game. I mean, obviously Batum, the usual suspects. Batum is the one who's in a really good spot, and that's because he's gonna have Harden defense, Eric Gordon defense. So he's the one that's in a great matchup. I have a feeling he's gonna be the chalky guy, and in GPPs I may fade him in GPPs. I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that he's gonna be the one that's more chalky over Kemba, and it makes sense because you can play Harden at point guard, Westbrook at point guard. So you can essentially play those 2 guys, and then you could play Batum at the 2. So I think that'll be a common option. But in cash games, if you want to lock Batum up, I think that's certainly fine. I would trust Batum in cash. I think his floor is probably 30 or something like that. So I think he's a fine cash game play. MKG has got a tougher matchup with Ariza, but he's still in play. And like with Harden, I wouldn't mind targeting the centers regardless, whether there's other plays or not. Guys like Capella, I guess just Capella because Harrell hasn't really been getting that much run lately. Anyway, moving on. Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James are all expected to rest against Oklahoma City. And from what I understand, Vegas they have that already. Like when they set the lines, like they know that, and the line is still very, very slim. So that makes you wonder. It's interesting without the big 3. Vegas seems to think that this game will still stay close, and I think that's extremely interesting. Now, granted, we did just see Oklahoma City go to Cleveland with the big 3 playing, and they got smashed. But that was in Cleveland. It's a little bit different. I love Westbrook today. I really, really like Westbrook today. He projects the highest every night, of course. And on a 5-game slate, I prefer to trust the projections a little bit more. On a large game slate, there's obviously so many options, and there's different scenarios. And at GPPs, I don't like to trust the projections solely. I trust the projections always, but not solely. I rely on those things a lot. But anyway, without Love, Irving, and LeBron, it's going to be interesting to see. I think on paper, Keith Felder gets a bump, but we don't even know if he's going to. I would imagine he's going to start, but McRae and Felder are typically the guys that handle the ball more because Shumpert's also out. Remember that. So McRae, Felder, those guys will handle the ball a little bit more. Liggins should get some decent run here. Jones should get a decent opportunity here, and obviously Channing Frye and Richard Jefferson are going to see some playing time. So this is going to be a tough situation to figure out, but this is where you can get a lot of your value. And that's another reason that I don't think that that Kemba will be too popular today, just because I think that you're going to pay for Harden or Westbrook at point guard. If not, you're going to get the value, stick Harden at shooting guard, and you're going to play the value guys at point guard. So I think that is very interesting. And this is obviously a good place to get your value, especially if they think this game's going to stay close. If they think this game's going to stay close, that means at least a few guys from Cleveland is going to have to play well for this game to stay close, because they're going to have to keep up with Westbrook. So I definitely think that this is going to be where we want to find our value. And that's it. That's all I'll say. If Kay Felder plays, he's probably a guy that I'm going to want some exposure to. Whoever the point guard is here, I'm going to want some exposure to for sure. Let's see. Rodney Hood is out. I don't think there's anything. That's an ugly game. Seth Curry. Let's go through the game real quick. Rodney Hood is out. Seth Curry's probable. Bogut's questionable. D. Will's questionable. And Brea's out. That's an ugly, ugly game. Two of the slowest paced teams in the league. I don't really want any of these guys. And it's a tough matchup for them, too. I mean, if Barnes plays I guess Favors is in a decent spot against Barnes, but Favors' minutes have been up and down. I think Gobert is a pretty good play. I prefer to take him in pace-up spots, but especially if Bogut is out, who's going to stop Gobert? I don't know. I think, what's his name? George Hill is in a pretty good spot against Yogi. I'm off of Yogi today, unfortunately. His price is, I don't know what his price is. I didn't even look at his price. I just don't like that matchup. I don't like targeting guys against Utah. I know nobody does. It's nothing new. But, yeah, Yogi's down to 5K, so he gets a little bit of a discount against Utah, but that's not enough of a discount. Now, listen, if Yogi was down to like 4K, yeah, I'd take a chance and I'd play him against George Hill, but I don't think I want to go there. I think there's other value guys that are even cheaper that I'd rather take from Cleveland, and this game in general is just ugly. I just don't like it. Let me see, what else we got? Okay, moving on. It looks like Boston. We do have some injuries. Okay, so Avery Bradley is supposed to be out with his Achilles, and Evan Turner is expected to be out with a hand issue. I don't know exactly what it is. I just saw it was a hand issue. This is interesting. So IT2 certainly remains a phenomenal play without Bradley. His price is 10K. Looks like he was 10-1 yesterday. He only played 33 minutes yesterday, even though it was back-to-back. They got whooped on, and they were 8-point favorites, and they got whooped on last night. It did not go well for him. We've seen Isaiah Thomas play well in back-to-backs a couple times. Let's see. It looks like, honestly, lately he's done better on the back end of back-to-backs than he has on the front. I think Isaiah Thomas is a very, very awesome tournament play today. Especially, okay, last night he got 42 FanDuel points, so he did a little better than I thought he did. But I think it's a phenomenal spot for him to bounce back after yesterday. And we know he's capable of putting up 60. We've seen him do it. So he's a guy where if you're going to fade Westbrook or Harden, if you're going to fade one of them, I think he might be the guy to look to at 10K. I think he'll be super low owned. He's in the back end of a back-to-back, and we just watched the fiasco. This game in general is pretty interesting because aside from Isaiah Thomas being in a good spot, I think that Crowder becomes in a much better spot without Turner. Turner's actually one of their better defenders. I think for value, Harkless becomes a great value play. I think he's super cheap on both sides. I don't know what he is exactly on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, he's 4K. I think he's like 38 on FanDuel. But he should get some run here. Now, in the beginning of the year, earlier in the year, he was their full-time starter, and he was playing over 30 minutes a game. Hasn't been the case. Evan Turner's kind of came in and took some of those minutes away from him. But I would imagine that with Turner out, they're going to have to play Harkless. I mean, I don't know for sure. I guess we have to double check. But I would imagine with Turner out, I would assume that Harkless would get all those minutes. And if that's the case, if he's going to get all those minutes, I think he's a great play at 4K. And he's a .78 projected points per minute guy, so he's not a guy that's going to absolutely crush every time. But even like Number Fire projects him for 29.13 minutes. I guess they are assuming that Turner, that's with Turner out. So if he plays just under 30 minutes, he should hit his salary by 0.34. He should go over his salary by 0.34. So I think in cash games, he's a perfectly fine value play to get you to be able to get those, so you can afford guys like Westbrook and all those other guys you want to play. Staying within this game, I think that, let me just pull up DraftKings again. I think this game is certainly interesting. I really, really think this game, for GPP purposes, is super interesting. And it's going to be on TV, so it may become a little chalk, but it's the second highest total on the night. And I like it. And it's a very close spread. Obviously, Damian Lillard is in a phenomenal spot. And shouldn't be too popular just because of the fact that like Harden and Westbrook are on the slate. Then again, there is a lot of value. So if you can find the right value guys here, I think this is a nice stars and scrub night. If you can find enough value plays, which there's a lot of them, this could be an interesting stars and scrubs night if you can make it work. But it's not going to be easy. But yeah, I think Lillard is in a great spot today. He's going to be matched up against Lillard and McCollum are both in good spots. The thing I like about this situation for Lillard is because McCollum is playing, they're going to have to put whoever the two guard is, they're going to have to put them on McCollum, especially because McCollum has actually been playing better than Lillard lately. So in general, I can see them trying to stick, Smart or Jaylen Brown on McCollum, which would leave Lillard against Isaiah Thomas. And whoever is playing Isaiah Thomas, whoever's going to be matched up with Isaiah, that's the guy I want. I say it all the time. So I think the Portland guys are very interesting to me. And even on the Boston's a horrible rebounding team. So even guys like Aminu is in play at power forward. They struggle against power forwards. Plumlee's in play. I'm not too concerned about Horford there. I think Plumlee can go up and grab some boards for us. So I think Portland is definitely interesting today. It's a 5-game slate, but there's some options here. It's not like there's one game I think you can comfortably avoid, and that would be the Utah-Dallas game. And you can play like one or two guys from the game and feel okay because somebody in that game, even though it's a low total, somebody's going to have a good game. So you can go there. I think we're going to find most of our value today. We are going to find in the Cleveland game. And then, of course, I think that obviously our stars, we have Westbrook, IT2, James Harden, Lillard, Kemba, even McCollum, Batum, all these guys are in play. So it's going to be interesting. It should be a lot of fun. If you have any questions, that's it. That's it for the breakdown. If you have any questions, you could reach out to me on Twitter at CK_013. You can obviously reach out to the WiseTake Twitter at Wise_Take. If you're not a member of WiseTake.com, please go there now and sign up. Membership is free. You get access to our free NBA, DraftKings, and FanDuel projections, our free cheat sheets. We have the NBA chart up there. We have the NBA odds chart. We have the DVP charts on there. They're all for you to use. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you're watching this video on YouTube, please hit that like button for us. We appreciate that. And subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Podbean, give us a follow. Maybe leave us a comment. If you're listening on iTunes, subscribe to the channel, rate us, review us, try to bump us up those charts if you like what we're doing here. And we really appreciate you guys that watch. We say it every time, and I really do. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much it. So, good luck today. If you're in the east, if you're in the northeast like me, stay warm, stay inside. It's getting pretty nasty out there. Stay off the roads. And if you're anywhere else, enjoy your day. Probably like a normal day is probably nothing to you. And yeah, so if you're playing tonight, I'm certainly playing tonight. So get at me on Twitter later. We could talk a little bit. And yeah, so as always, good luck.